Freedom. What good is freedom if you cannot enjoy your rights? I am Dr. Rodel Aguas, and this is American Government. Our topic in this series is the 14th Amendment. After President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in April 1865, he was succeeded by Vice President Andrew Johnson. Johnson was faced with a heavy and complicated task of incorporating the southern states back into the United States after they lost the Civil War. Coming from Tennessee, a southern state, and a slave owner himself, Johnson became lenient towards the rebel leaders and former slave owners of the southern states. He allowed the legislatures of these states to be dominated by these rebel leaders and former slave owners. This allowed them to enact laws that made it very difficult for former slaves to enjoy their freedom and equal rights with American citizens. The United States Congress was, however, dominated by Republicans who have fought against slavery against the Democrats who favored slavery. President Johnson belonged to the Democratic Party. Although he was in favor of the Emancipation Proclamation that abolished slavery, his approach in winning the support of former rebel leaders for the Reconstruction efforts of the government proved that he tolerated oppressive black codes that regulated the behaviors of former slaves and effectively made them dependent once again on plantation owners. Although the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment made slavery illegal in the United States, the Republicans thought that freedom without the enjoyment of equal rights is not freedom at all. Another amendment was needed to strengthen the gains of the 13th Amendment. Congressman Thaddeus Stevens introduced the 14th Amendment, which was a combination of the following proposals. First, guarantee and protections of the civil rights for former slaves. Second, how to apportion state representatives in Congress. This authorized the federal government to punish states that violated or abridged their citizens' right to vote by proportionally reducing the state's representation in Congress. Third, punitive measures against the Confederate States of America, so that anyone who engaged in insurrection against the United States could not hold civil, military, or elected office without the approval of 2/3 of the House and Senate. And fourth, the exemption of both the federal and state governments from paying war debts incurred by the fallen Confederate States of America. Although President Johnson opposed the 14th Amendment, Congress was able to get 2/3 of the majority vote, which ratified the 14th Amendment on July 9, 1868. Let us focus on Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." There are 3 clauses in this section. First clause is the Citizenship Clause. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. This clause defines how United States citizenship is acquired. First, citizenship by birth and by blood. One acquires citizenship by being born in the United States. This is based on the principle of jus soli, right of the soil, where citizenship is granted by the country where the child is born, regardless of the citizenship of the parents. Citizenship is also acquired through jus sanguinis, right of blood, where citizenship is granted to children whose parents are United States citizens. Second, citizenship by naturalization. One acquires citizenship by naturalization, which is a process by which the United States citizenship is granted to a foreign national after fulfilling the requirements established by the United States Congress. This clause affirmed that emancipated slaves were in fact American citizens and thus enjoyed the rights afforded to all citizens of the United States. The second clause is the enforcement clause. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. This greatly expanded the civil and legal rights of all American citizens by protecting them from infringement by the states as well as by the federal government. Thus, state and local governments cannot enact laws that prevent the free exercise of the civil and legal rights of every American citizen, especially those defined in the Bill of Rights. The third clause, Due Process Clause. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This clause expanded the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment to apply to the states as well as the federal government. This clause has been cited in landmark Supreme Court cases involving the Bill of Rights, to wit, Lochner v. New York, 1905, Gitlow v. New York, 1925, Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, Gideon v. Wainwright, 1963, among others. The 14th Amendment gave the United States Supreme Court the power to strike down laws created by state governments that continue to deprive African Americans and other minorities of their civil and legal rights. However, the white-dominated Supreme Court initially showed reluctance about exercising its power to defend civil rights of minorities at the state level. It was only in the beginning of the 20th century, in the landmark case of Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, that the Supreme Court finally found its courage to use its power under the 14th Amendment to crack down state laws that have for years deprived African Americans and other minorities their civil rights as United States citizens. It took 86 long, painful years for our civil rights under the 14th Amendment to finally be defended by the Supreme Court. This does not mean that we can now let our guard down. We must always remain vigilant in seeing to it that our civil and legal rights are not infringed by anyone in any way.